What's up guys, in this video I will compare the specs and features of the new Google Nexus 5 and the Sony Xperia Z1. So starting off from the display, the Google Nexus 5 comes with a 5.0 inch screen, so does the Sony Xperia Z1, and both of these screens have the 1080p HD resolution, but the PPI on the Nexus 5 is slightly higher than the Sony Xperia Z1 at about 445 PPI, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 has 441 PPI. But the Sony Xperia Z1 display is waterproof and dustproof, whereas the Google Nexus 5 display is a normal IPS LCD display which is not waterproof. Looking at the software, the Google Nexus 5 comes with the latest and greatest version of the Android, which is the Android 4.4 KitKat, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 comes with the Android 4.2.2. So it is not the latest, but also not the worst, because it runs on the Sony's own Xperia skin, whereas the Google Nexus 5 has a pure stock Android feel with no customization of UI. And however, Sony has said that they will update their device to Android 4.4 soon, but right now it's only on the Android 4.2.2. In terms of the weight and dimensions, the Google Nexus 5 is a lot more lighter than the Sony Xperia Z1, weighing at about 130 gram, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 weighs at about 170 gram. And in terms of the thickness, the Google Nexus 5 is slightly thicker than the Sony Xperia Z1 at about 8.59 millimeter, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 is 8.5 millimeter. Looking at the processor, both devices comes with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 CPU with the new Adreno 330 GPU, and both of the devices has 2GB of RAM. In terms of storage, the Google Nexus 5 has 16GB and 32GB of internal memory with no microSD slot, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 comes with the 16GB of internal memory with microSD slot up to 64GB. Looking at the camera, the Google Nexus 5 comes with a 8 megapixel camera with LED flash, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 comes with a 20.7 megapixel camera with LED flash, which has a Sony's own G lens and which produce pretty sharp images actually. And both of the camera can record 1080p HD video at 30 frames per second, but the camera on the Google Nexus 5 is the OiS Camera, which is the optical image stabilization, and also has bunch of other features like burst mode, digital zoom, geotagging, HDR, panorama, and just like that, the camera on the Sony Xperia Z1 has also digital image stabilization, but it lacks the optical image stabilization. There's no optical image stabilization in the Sony Xperia Z1, and other than that, the camera is pretty good on both of the devices. In terms of the front-facing camera, the Google Nexus 5 has 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera, and the Sony Xperia Z1 has a 2 megapixel camera. And here, the Google Nexus 5 can only record 720p HD video with its front-facing camera, but the 2 megapixel camera on the Sony Xperia Z1 can record 1080p HD video. Now, this is where the Nexus 5 usually lacks, because a lot of the Android sets out there, Galaxy S4, Note 3, all of those front-facing cameras on those phones can run 1080p HD video, can record 1080p HD video, but the Nexus 5 can only record a 720p HD video, so that's a drawback here. In terms of battery, the Google Nexus 5 comes with a 2300 mAh battery, whereas the Sony Xperia Z1 comes with 3000 mAh battery. Now here, this is the biggest drawback, according to my opinion, in the Nexus 5, because the battery is not so good as compared to other, because this phone only comes with a 2300 mAh battery, because a lot of Android devices running on the Snapdragon 800 processor has battery above 2800 mAh, and the only device that has 2300 mAh battery and Snapdragon 800 processor is the Sony Xperia Z1f, which is the mini version of this phone, but not so many, because it has same spec as the Sony Xperia Z1, but that device runs on the 720p HD screen, because that device has a 720p HD screen, so that's why the 2300 milliampere battery works good on that phone, but on the Sony Xperia Z1, the 3000 milliampere battery is okay, and with its screen and can handle it will give good battery hours. But on the Nexus 5 is the biggest drawback, that 1080p HD screen, Snapdragon 800 processor, higher clock speed, that will result in a battery flaw. So that's not so good for the Nexus 5, and here the Sony Xperia Z1 definitely go ahead of the Nexus 5. So that's it, guys. That was a comparison of specs between the Google Nexus 5 and the Sony Xperia Z1. And if you enjoyed this video, then give this video a thumbs up and vote down below for the winner. And I will see you in my next video. Peace out.